Can I call the meeting to order? It's 1:30. My mic on. Okay, welcome everybody. Good afternoon. I'd like to open the meeting with our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge the land we're meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Do we have any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none. Our first item today, before I run through the agenda, is the swearing in of a new member of the Police Services Board. Mr. Ainsworth Morgan has been appointed by the Province of Ontario and is joining us today for the first time. I had a chance to have a discussion with him early this morning, and I'm very excited, as I know the Mayor is, and the rest of the board, to have Mr. Morgan with us. He brings a wealth of community experience, and I know, given the issues that face this board, we're looking very much forward to his advice and counsel and recommendations on moving the service forward on a number of fronts. Mr. Morgan, welcome, and I'd like to call you forward for your swearing in with Mr. Teschner.
Faithfully, impartially, and according to the Police Services Act, any other act, and any regulation, rule, or bylaw, and your oath of secrecy. I affirm that I will not disclose any information obtained by me in the course of my duties as a member of the Toronto Police Services Board, except as I may be authorized or required by law. And I'll ask you to sign. Same.
Before I ask Mr. Ainsworth for any comments, I would like to ask board members if you have any welcoming comments. Mayor Tory, do you have any?
Well, I would like to just, first of all, say thank you to the Province of Ontario for an excellent appointment, and I've conveyed that sentiment to the Premier. I had the good fortune to know Ainsworth Morgan from various past lives. I said half tongue-in-cheek this morning that the best one is that he's a former Canadian Football League player, but that's not true because he's gone on from that to be a respected educator. And I will tell you that I got an email, for example, from a parent at the school where he's now the principal, just saying how much the kids loved him. And you may say, well, what kind of a measure is that? But I think we all know that to have the kids love you if you're the principal of a school is an indication that you're doing the job right, especially kids of that age. But he's also not only been a respected educator in Regent Park and Helmo Park now, but a respected citizen. And I think that that's the kind of person we want at the Police Services Board, somebody who brings a wealth of experience in areas such as education and a wealth of experience in the community to be able to help us in what is a very complex task of trying to oversee and at the same time bring about necessary change in the excellent job already that our police service does, but knowing we can always do better. So I'm just delighted that somebody of his caliber is here. And again, I commend the Government of Ontario for this provincial appointment, which is absolutely top rate. Thank you.
Any other members wish to make comments? I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, everyone. First of all, I'd just like to say I am incredibly honored and humbled to be a part of this board, and I really do look forward to working with my fellow board members and the police services to ensure that we are bringing safety and security to all our citizens here in Toronto. So I'm humbled and honored and look forward to the work ahead. And lastly, I just want to, it's my daughter's 14th birthday today, so I want to say happy birthday to her. And my students at Pelmo Park, they're watching today, so I just wanted to say hello to them. And again, a big thank you for this opportunity.
Okay, now on to the agenda. So the second item before us today is the election of the chair and the vice chair. That's being held for a deputation and also for the process itself. Item number 3 is the confirmation of the minutes of December the 16th. Can I have somebody move adoption of those minutes? Ms. Chandra-Casera, seconder. Ms. Molinar, all in favor? They're carried. Item number 4 is an update from the Toronto Police Service Board. It's Mental Health and Addictions Advisory Panel. There won't be a presentation on that, but we do have a deputation, and Ms. Chandra-Casera has some comments on it, so that's held. Item number 5 is special constable appointments and reappointments, January 2020. That's being held for deputation. Item number 6, new job description, Assistant Manager Communications Support. Do I have a motion to adopt? Mayor Tory, seconder. Ms. Chandra-Casera, all in favor? That's carried. Item number 7 is the Independent Civilian Review into Missing Persons Investigation, Account for Professional Services and Reviews Request for additional budget funding. Anybody wish to hold that? Mayor Tory will be holding that. Item number 8, the Triennial Report Skills Development and Learning Plan. Do I have a motion to receive? Ms. Molinar, seconder. Seconder. Mayor Tory, all in favor? That's carried. Item number 9 is City of Toronto Council Decision 2017 Annual Statistical Report. That's being held for deputation. Item number 10, City of Toronto Council Decision Request to establish a community police office at 200 Poplar Road is being held for deputation. Item number 11, the Chief Administrative Investigation into the custody injury to 2018.53. Do I have a motion to receive? Ms. Molinar, seconder. Ms. Chandra-Casera, all in favor? That's carried. Item number 12, Chief Administrative Investigation into the custody injury to 2018.23. A motion to receive. Ms. Chandra-Casera, seconder. Ms. Molinar, all in favor? That's carried. Item number 13, Chief Administrative Investigation into the custody injury to Mr. 2017.92. A motion to receive. Councilor Nunziata, seconder. Ms. Chandra-Casera, all in favor? That's carried. Item number 14, Chief Administrative Investigation of the custody death of 2018-56. A motion to receive. Ms. Molinar, seconder. Mr. Morgan, all in favor? That's carried. Item number 15, we have a walk-on. It's available in the corner over there if anybody would like to pick up the report. And item number 15 is agreement for the use of property located at 660 Fleet Street, Fort York Armory, Toronto. I will hold that only because the public hasn't had a chance to look at it. And if anybody wants to speak to it, please let us know and we will put you on the deputation list given you haven't had a chance to read it yet. So I'm going to hold it in my name and please take a look at it. It's in the corner over there. Okay, so moving back to the top of the agenda, which is the election of the chair and the vice chair. I'll turn this over to staff.
Good afternoon. Since this is the first meeting of the year, and in accordance with subsection 28, sub 1 of the Police Services Act, which provides that the board shall elect the chair at its first meeting each year. Nomination for the position of chair will now be accepted.
Point of order. Oh, yes, sorry, that's my mistake. Yes, I didn't see you there, Derek. I didn't realize you were here. We do have a deputation on this matter. I looked earlier and you weren't there, but now you're there. Welcome and happy New Year.
Oh, happy New Year. I Just want to say by me speaking at this meeting, this shall not be deemed to be in any way my consent, express or implied, in doing so is fraud. God bless Her Majesty the Queen, and long live Her Majesty the Queen. And let the record show as person is defined as a corporation in the Legislation Act of Ontario. If I have ever led the Toronto Police Services Board to believe in any way that I am a person, then that would be a mistake, and that I ask all of you to please forgive me. So I haven't been here in a couple months, actually since the first time you got appointed chair. And so Miguel actually had a question for me about you. He wanted to know something about you, something about your character. So I have a funny feeling you're about to be appointed again, so I'm going to say it now. So a year ago, I got arrested, well, not me, but the person I have at the Northern District Library. So I'd never been to the library board before. So like, I'm really ticked off about what happened. So I signed up to speak on 5 items, and I spent like an hour, doing research on what I wanted to tell board on each item. So I go there and I speak, and I, go sit down. I'm expecting to be called back up for the other 4 items, and the chair goes, okay, so moving on, public presentations are now concluded. Moving on to the rest of the agenda. And I stand up and I go, hold on a second, I signed up for 4 more items. Oh no, here at the library board, you only get 5 minutes in total to speak here. And then I just pretty much lost my you-know-what, right? And as I was going off on the library board, like, you show up to general government with Councillor Ainsley, Board of Health with Sarah Doucette, Executive Committee Mayor Tory, the Audit Committee Chair Councillor Hart. You get to speak for 5 minutes on not many people do this, but you get to speak for 5 minutes on each item you sign up. Who the hell are you people to tell me blah, blah, blah. And as I'm doing that, I notice Councillor Jim Hart is sitting back in his chair like this, just looking over the crowd, slowly nodding his head back and forth, as if to say, yeah, Derek's right. That's the way they do it all the other board meetings at the City of Toronto. And so my point is that you showed me something that night, Chair Hart, because somebody who knows about the City of Toronto has told me they looked into it, and at the time they said, on that library board there's Jim Hart and then there's a bunch of NDPers. So I hope you show, Mayor Tory is laughing, I hope you're able to show the same amount of impartiality being the chair of this board as you showed to me that first time I showed up at the library board. So I want to just go over a few things that I don't want whoever's going to be the chair or vice chair haven't overlooked. You take an oath to the Constitution. So help me God's the last line in the oath you take, and you hold the Bible. So a few things I want to go over with, because you're literally swearing on what is in that Bible while you're holding it. So I just want to go over a few things that are said in that. Luke 11:9, and I say unto you, ask and it shall be given, seek and ye shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. For everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. Mark 4:2, for there is nothing hid which shall not be manifested, neither was anything kept secret, but that it should come abroad. Luke 12:2, for there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, neither hid that shall not be known. John 3:20, for everyone that doeth evil hateth the light, and I suspect that's the real reason that we're not allowed to ask questions at these meetings. For everyone that doeth evil hateth the light, neither cometh to the light, lest his deeds should be reproved. So just something to think about when I try and ask a question at these meetings in the future. So as vice chair, I've given this a lot of a thought too, and I decided that Councillor Nunziata should be the vice chair of the Toronto Police Services Board. And my reasoning for this is because back in May at the board meeting, she just about knocked me off my seat when, I wrote here on Facebook, hooray for Miguel. He gets Councillor Francis Nunziata to actually explain the way it should be when we speak at these City of Toronto public meetings. Councillor Nunziata said to Miguel, as I said, we will ask the questions of staff. I'm not here to answer your question. The staff will answer. Okay? Can I have the deputy chief comment, please? And then it turned out Tony here answered the question that Miguel had. And, I've been a little rough on Councillor Nunziata in the past, but I gotta say, she blew my mind when she did that. And I think she really understands, because I went off on this at North York Budget Committee, Section 2 and Section 212.1 of the City of Toronto Act. Councillor Nunziata probably understands what those two sections say, and that the City of Toronto, the province tells the City of Toronto that they have to do things in a way that is accountable to the public and transparent to the public. And this idea of like, oh, you can't ask us a question because we haven't passed a procedural bylaw that allows you to ask us a question is complete nonsense. And hopefully, if we have simple questions about, just answer them, please.
Thank you, Derek. Any questions for the deputant? Seeing none, thank you very much. Back over to you.
Thank you. Since this is the first meeting of the year, in accordance with subsection 28, sub 1 of the Police Services Act, which provides that the board shall elect the chair at its first meeting in each year, nominations for the position of chair will now be accepted. Who would like to nominate for this position? Mayor Tory?
Yes, I would, with great pleasure, nominate Jim Hart to be the chair of the Police Services Board for the year 2020.
Thank you very much. As you heard, Mayor Tory nominates Jim Hart. Can I have a seconder? Thank you very much. Are there any further nominations? Hearing none, nominations for the position of chair are now closed. Mayor Tory nominated Mr. Hart, which was seconded by Ms. Chandrasekera. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Chair Hart, do you accept this nomination?
Yes, I do, with pleasure. In the short period of time I've been in this position, I've been nothing but impressed by the Toronto Police Service, and it's a delight to be in this position. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There being only one nomination for the position of chair, Mr. Hart is the re-elected chair of the board for the year 2020 and until his successor is appointed. Congratulations, Chair Hart. The board will now elect for the position of vice chair. Again, in accordance with subsection sub 2 of the Police Services Act, the board shall elect the position of vice chair, and the vice chair shall act as the chair if the chair is absent or if the chair's position is vacant. Nominations for the position of vice chair will now be accepted. Councillor Nunziata?
Nominate Marie Molyneux.
Thank you very much. As we've heard, Councillor Nunziata nominates Ms. Molyneux for the position of vice chair. Can I have a seconder?
I would like to second that.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Does the candidate agree to be nominated?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm honored.
Thank you, Ms. Molyneux. Are there any further nominations? No. Hearing none, nominations for the position of vice chair will now be closed. Councillor Nunziata has nominated Ms. Molyneux, which was seconded by Chair Hart. All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Carried. There being only one nomination for the position of vice chair, Ms. Molyneux has been re-elected for this position for the year 2020 and until her successor is appointed. Congratulations, Vice Chair Molyneux. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for doing that so effectively and quickly. Moving forward to item number 4, which is an update from the Toronto Police Services Board's Mental Health and Addictions Advisory Panel. I believe we have a deputation, Melanie Bobrowski, if you're here. I don't know if you are. Right here. Terrific. Take your time. Welcome.
I'd like to say a blessed new year to all of you. Hold on a second.
Take your time. Clock when you're ready.
You're not counting yet, are you?
We're not counting till you're ready.
Not yet. Oh, my gosh. Well, with the subway problem, it was a little bit hard getting everywhere on time. Okay, here you go. Well, test 1, 2. A little bit too loud. I feel like singing a song to all of you. Okay. I'll be very short. I promise not to take up the 5 minutes that I'm allotted. The first thing I'd like to say is This board looks wonderful. You're very, I'm sure, intelligent and eligible to be here. Oh, see, I'm out of breath because I ran up the subway. Forgive me. Yeah, I'm glad I don't have to sing right now. But I think what we need, and I'm speaking to the issue of mental health, I believe that we need to see not just intelligent politicians like yourself and police officers and the mayor, but we also need to see a psychiatrist on this board, someone who can analyze the deputants and deputations, made by all of us, to lend legitimacy to this board. Because right now I see all of you, and I recognize some of you and from what you've done before, but I don't see somebody who's capable of analyzing the problems of a civilian. All of you are politicians, and the bottom line is probably your number one, reason, and you also care about us. But if you had a psychiatrist here, he would be able to analyze all of us, why we're so stressed out, why I'm stressed out sometimes when I come here. And that would tell you that this woman has been injured and has been wounded and has been coming for help, and she's legitimate and she's honest. The second thing is, not only do I want to see people that are of varied talents on the board, but also nurses at each station. For example, my example. Quickly, and I promise not to go into it for too long. When I was falsely arrested by my next door neighbor who did illegal construction, he had his friends from 11th Division come over and arrest me. And for someone who has never had problems with the police, who's prayed for the police, for your safety, for the safety of this city, to be handcuffed like an animal, dragged from my home, accused of threatening death and criminal harassment over a police officer and his wife who had power, who knew how to lie, how to manipulate you, to have me falsely arrested. And there is no way in God's heaven I would threaten anybody. I stood up for my rights. And then to be labeled as ED, when I read all the things that went to court, I said, what is that? Emotion disturbed. And I said, if any of you were handcuffed for something you didn't do, let's say the RCMP walked in here and arrested all of you, like the old KGB style. They arrested you or someone you love at home right now when you're here, and they started to weep and cry. Do you think that would be fair to label them as ED? I was a traumatized woman. The only time that I've seen stoicism in anybody was in Karla Homolka, who could come here and speak to you just like this and look at you in the eye and not admit to her crimes. Maybe police officers shouldn't have the right, without a psychiatric training, or even doctors don't label you with a condition, whether it's physical or mental, immediately on the spot like that, and destroy your lives forever. These records. And I'm not ashamed to say to the civilians and to you that this is wrong, this is evil, it's destructive. What if I was an 18-year-old young black male, Asian male, or just a young stupid white guy, okay? And I mouthed off to you, and I said, I didn't do any of this, blah, 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 on and on. Do you think it's fair to swear, to yell as a police officer, call somebody stupid as I was at 11th Division because I was weeping and I was saying my praise to the Blessed Mother and to Jesus and saying, Jesus, Lord Jesus, what is going on in this country that this man has the power to manipulate other police officers and give you guys a bad name? Because just think, my whole church, probably over 1,000 members, know about this, and they're saying, Melanie, are you not getting justice yet? No, I'm not getting justice. Anyways, I'll go quickly. You can all look into my case, Melanie Bobrowski. Okay, stay of proceedings due to police corruption, and you guys have done nothing about it. And there are thousands of us in this city who have been traumatized. And you know what the danger is? It's to the police officers, because your name is getting slurred by the bad police officers that you keep on your payroll. Police officers should not have the right to label ED without having a license in either psychology or psychiatry. That should be left to a nurse. Every police station should have a nurse. So if somebody's injured, wounded, or even traumatized, the nurse can immediately step in and say, I'm sorry, this person is only stressed out from the arrest, from the situation. This is unfair. You have money for millions and millions of other things. How about just one nurse at each police station when person is brought in to analyze, is this person truly on drugs? I've never been on drugs. I don't drink, I don't smoke. I'm not a goody two-shoes. I eat too much. That's why I'm overweight.
Ms. Bobrovsky, can I ask you to wrap up? You're just over 5
Yes,
minutes
that's that. And do not call your own police officers broken toys when they suffer post-traumatic stress disorder. Help them, because if you're not helping your own police officers, then you are not helping us. And one last thing I'll leave you with. This is by a very well-known poet, Yevgeny Yevtushenko, who just passed away at 84. And his statement was, when truth is replaced by silence, the silence is a lie.
Thank you very much.
God bless you all. And I'm not here to attack you. And one last thing, do not call the civilians as when we call into a radio show and we speak of our trauma and our pain. Don't automatically, police officers, judge us and say, oh, you hate the police. You hate the police. You don't like us. Say to yourself, why are these people saying this? Get the psychiatrists on board. Get them on this board so they can listen to what's going on and they can then tell you what is really going on. Because I'm telling you, as a singer, like I told you before, if I sang the same song on stage every night, the club owner would fire me.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bobrovsky.
Thank you.
Any questions of the deputy?
I would love to answer a question. Ask me anything you like,
Seeing
please.
none, I will actually ask one of Deputy McLean relative to one of your comments. Maybe Deputy McLean, you can comment on the deputant's comments around how we help our own officers, that we should be helping our own officers. I think that that we do an exceptional job of that, and I'd like.
That's a
you
good
to-
point.
and I'd like-
Unless the
I'd like you to
officer has
speak to it.
killed someone and lied about his neighbor when he did illegal construction
Bobrovsky.
and lied to your city officials.
Ms. Bobrovsky, I'd like the deputy to
Forgive me,
to speak
sorry.
to that.
I'm a very quiet person usually, as you can tell. I'm not being facetious.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about that. And in fact, I will be, I believe next month, our board report on our healthy workplace initiatives comes to the board. In addition to our psychological services program, we now have 3 psychologists on staff. And because of that capacity, we're actually looking at some new programs to be initiated service-wide, that being a program for new recruits to come and see a psychologist within the first or second year of their employment, to remind them of some of the services that our psychological services folks do. We have a family wellness day as part of recruit training, which is actually, in my opinion, one of the most important days on the training calendar, when the recruits and members of their families come to our college and we talk about some of the wellness resources that we have. You will hear next month that 2020 is a wellness focus for Human Resources Command and the service, looking at developing a wellness strategy for our service. I might have spoken in front of the board about the coroner's expert panel report on police suicide, and how within that report there is a recommendation for all police services in Ontario to have a wellness strategy by June of 2021. It is my goal to have one for this service by the end of the year, regardless of what happens with the recommendations in that report. I'm looking at some of the resources that are required in wellness so that we can deliver that, as well as making some investments in that unit this year.
Thank you very much. I think that's very important for everybody to hear. I appreciate your comments. Any questions? I know Chandra-Kassara has some comments to make on the report before us, but any questions on the report? No? Anybody like to speak to it? Ms. Chandra-Kassara?
Yes, I'll just give a quick update. I'm very pleased to share that the Mental Health and Addictions Advisory Panel of the board met twice in the fall. There are some members here from the panel today, which is great. Thank you. And for the benefit of our new board member and the public, just to remind everyone, this panel includes myself and Chair Hart as the board members, members of the service, including Deputy Chief Coxon and Deputy Chief Ewan, and members of the community, including representatives from organizations run by and for people with lived experience. And to the deputant's earlier point, there are several mental health and addictions professionals on the panel, including a psychiatrist, a physician, and several social workers, including myself. The full membership of the panel was approved back in May of last year by the board, and we had a lengthy public and open recruitment process. And the panel is co-chaired by myself, Chair Hart, Steve Lurie, who's the Executive Director of the Canadian Mental Health Association Toronto branch, and Jennifer Chambers, who's the Executive Director of the Empowerment Council. We had our first 2 meetings in September and November, and generally the structure of the meetings, we're focusing on having at least one community-based presentation, one presentation from the service about an existing program, and we're also receiving regular updates on the status of the implementation of the service's mental health and addiction strategy, which was released in September. And we've identified 4 main themes for this year. Actually, we have a meeting next week, which is going to focus on the Mobile Crisis Intervention Team program and the Focus Situation Table program. In the spring, we'll be visiting the 911 Communications Center. In the summer, we'll be visiting the Toronto Police College to observe a module of training. And in the fall, we will be focused on the mental health and wellness of the service members. So really great to align with what you were talking about, Deputy McLean. So the panel will make regular reports to the board at these public meetings as we develop recommendations to the board. So you can expect regular meetings coming up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I have a motion to receive? Ms. Molinar, seconded by Councilor Nunziata. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. I will move on to the next item, which is special constable appointments and reappointments for January 2020. Item number 5, we have a deputant. Mr. Derek.
Okay, so this item has to deal with appointments, reappointments of special constables for TTC subject to approval of Ministry of the Solicitor General. I'm going to read off a series of emails I've recently had with the TTC, which have led me to believe these TTC special constables haven't been properly trained to do their job, and as they are acting under the color of law. So this is me to Rick Lurie. Hi Rick, and how are you? We spoke briefly at the North York Executive Committee last spring. You mentioned you remembered me speaking at the TTC board before. Regarding TTC bylaw number 1, I was just wondering in the definition section, it doesn't actually have a definition for bylaw in it, does it? I know this would have happened before your time there, but what's the definition for bylaw the TTC relies upon in regards to TTC bylaw number 1? Good morning, Derek. This Office of TTC CEO Rick Lurie has brought your email to my attention regarding TTC bylaw number 1. TTC bylaw number 1 is a bylaw regulating the use of the Toronto Transit Commission local passenger transportation system. She includes a screenshot of TTC bylaw number 1 preamble. Hope that helps. Terry Hay, Executive Communications Representative, CEO's Office. She doesn't answer my question. Me. The definition for bylaw with the highlighted link you provided for me, so this is the definition for bylaw that TTC uses in regards to TTC bylaw number 1? Can Rick Lurie put this TTC bylaw number 1's definition section so going forward, the public can have public notice in the future of what to expect the definition for bylaw is? There was a link to Merriam-Webster online. Terry. The definition of TTC bylaw number 1 is on our website. Please see email below. TTC bylaw number 1 is a bylaw regulating the use of the Toronto Transit Commission local passenger transportation system. She doesn't answer the question. Me. Hi, Terry. I'm not sure you understand my question. You wrote TTC bylaw number 1 is a bylaw regulating the use of the Toronto Transit Commission local passenger transportation system. This implies my question was, can you explain to me what TTC bylaw number 1 is? My question is, as there is no definition for bylaw in TTC bylaw number 1's definition section, what then is the definition for bylaw the TTC uses? Terry. Hi, Derek. To respond to your additional inquiries regarding TTC bylaw number 1, our legal department advised the powers with respect to bylaws relating to the TTC is addressed in the City of Toronto Act. Again, she does not answer the question. Me. Hi, Terry. I'm still not sure you understand my question. You wrote, our legal department advised the powers with respect to bylaws relating to TTC is addressed in the City of Toronto Act. This implies my question was, where does it address the powers with respect to bylaws relating to the TTC? My question was, as there is no definition for bylaw in TTC bylaw number 1's definition section, what then is the definition for bylaw the TTC uses? Terry. Dear Derek Moran, I am writing further to your follow-up emails in connection with your question. What is the definition for bylaw the TTC uses? In answer to your question, as previously mentioned, the definition of a bylaw is universal in terms. Oh, the TTC is in touch with the universe now, are they? In terms that a bylaw is a rule or law established by an organization to regulate itself as allowed or provided for by some higher authority. With that said, the TTC has the authority to pass bylaws regulating the use of its transit system in accordance with Section 143, Part 15, I think, of the City of Toronto Act. In keeping with your feedback on this matter is being shared with the appropriate staff, and there is no consideration being given at this time to add this universal bylaw definition to the TTC website. Okay, here in reality, in the police officer's manual, I brought this up before, rule of law is described for you officers as starting off with the maxims of law, guiding principles. The maxim of law on this is the words of the law require interpretation, not from a popular meaning, not from Oxford, not from Merriam-Webster, but from the legal sense, and not a lax and precarious interpretation, but one that is fixed and positive, defined by statute. Now, what do you think is going to happen when I write back to Terry and say, oh, thank you for that quote of what a bylaw is? Which dictionary did you guys get it from? They're probably going to invoke solicitor-client privilege like this place did when I asked the same question about deputation. So I'm sure in the future there will be another TTC-related item, so I'll pick up from there what I find out.
Thank you, Derek. Any questions of the deputant? Seeing none, thank you very much.
I got 8 seconds left. It's like so painful trying to deal with the City of Toronto, trying to get a straight answer from out of them. It's just unbelievable.
Thank you. Do I have any questions on the report? Councilor Nunziata.
Yes, I just have a question to staff. What's that noise? So on page 2 of the report, am I reading this correctly? Toronto Community Housing, the approved complement is 300 and the current complement is 154. So that means that we're in the process of another 150? No?
It's up to them and their budget.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, I just want to know if I read this correctly.
I mean, you know the answer yet, because I just happened to ask the other day at a meeting. So.
I can certainly pass it over to the service, but generally speaking, Councillor, the complement is the ceiling that they can hire up to. The hiring decisions they make, where they allocate the budget funds, and where they want to hire at what point in the year and which budget cycle is totally within the purview of, in this case, TCHC, to your question. So they have up to that number to hire. That's the number of appointments that the board is in a position to approve. But the actual hiring decisions are
depending on the budget.
Yeah, for TCHC, TTC, all of those
Okay,
individual
it's just I've
entities.
never seen that part of it before, so I didn't realize. So they could hire another 150 depending on budget. Okay.
Any other questions? No. Anybody like to speak to this item?
Move the recommendation.
Okay, Councilor Nunziata, seconded by Mayor Tory. All in favor? That's carried. Item number 7, Mayor Tory, you held this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a couple of questions. Maybe Mr. Sandler could join us for a moment.
Welcome. Welcome.
Mr. Sandler, first of all, can I say, and through you to Justice Epstein as well, and to the small team, I know that you have a small but mighty team. Thank you for the work that you're doing so far. I think that people have underestimated the degree to which this report is going to be incredibly important to the community, to the police service, but I think also to the global community. I think this is work that's being done that is that is groundbreaking in the context of looking at something that doesn't get looked at very often in this kind of depth, especially in light of what has happened in some parts of our community, including in particular the LGBTQ plus community. My questions were simple and twofold in number. Number one, is this it in the context of additional financial resources that you require? And maybe you could just spend a minute talking about the mandate having been broadened out to some extent as a result of events that occurred. And number two, even more important in a way to me, although the money is important, but will you be finished your work on time? Because I think we need the report. We need to move on with the implications of the report. And so I'm just hopeful that this additional resource will, in fact, if anything, speed things up as opposed to slow them down. So.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'm delighted to respond to those questions. Let me just say by way of overview that the review has been going very, very well from our perspective. The outreach to the community has been extensive. I would estimate that at least 1,200 people have been involved in providing input to us in a variety of ways that we've provided for them to do so. We still have a public forum that will take place in June, yet another opportunity for the public to contribute to our work. We've also invited written submissions or deputations from individuals who want to contribute through our website. So there's a tremendous interest, as you've reflected, in our community, in our diverse communities, in the work that we are doing, and there has been interest shown right across the country as well in what our report will yield. I can assure you with complete confidence, and I don't say it lightly, that we are on schedule to finish on time or earlier than the time currently scheduled. I know that the board reflected in its earlier conversation with me that it's important that the report be completed in a timely way. So I can assure you that we are on schedule to complete it on or before the end of January of next year. Second of all, Justice Epstein is prepared to commit to you today that there will be no further request for additional funds. She will accommodate the budget if the request is granted in order to ensure that the work comes in within budget. So you can take that as a commitment on her part. I should indicate for the members of the public, I know the board is well aware of this, that originally when the $3 million budget was allocated, it was based upon a project that was to end at the end of April of this year. I've provided the figures to the board to reflect that had we been confined to the end of April, we would be within budget, within the $3 million budget, but the reflection of this request is that the 9 months additional work that's required and the scope of additional work required as a result of looking into all of the issues pertaining to the MacArthur investigations is such that a additional budget request is being made. But as I said, we're confident that we've correctly assessed our needs and will remain within them. So I hope that is responsive to the questions that you've asked. And I do also want to say that the board and the service have been very cooperative in responding to our extensive requests for documents. We've also met with many police officers, former police officers, civilian employees of the service, and are continuing to do so, as well as our meetings with many members of the community. So far, the message that I would bring is that the inquiry is going very smoothly, and we look forward to presenting our report to the board. Oh, I'm sorry, I neglected to mention one item, which I know you noted, but I should reflect it for the members of the public who may be looking at the letter which I provided to you, and that is there is a budget item in there of $708,000 for media or communications. That was a typo. It's $70,000. I'm sure you figured it out through the mathematics, but I would have had a tough time justifying a budget of that amount for media or communications. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
I don't think so.
Any other questions? Anybody like to speak to this item? Mayor Tory?
I would just like to speak to it briefly, simply to say, Mr. Chair, what I said in asking the question is sort of part of the preamble, but I think it bears repeating. I don't think we can underestimate the importance of this report, and I think people will look at it and they will see, as is the case, that $4 million, $2 million, $1 million, it's a lot of money. But when we look at the pain that is caused by people going missing, and in some cases going missing without a resolution for a long time and sometimes never, and if you look at the challenge that is in front of us in terms of making sure that we deal with those things properly, and that we look back at some of the things that have happened in particular communities, including but not limited to the LGBTQ to us plus communities, I just think this is a necessary investment, and that we want to make sure that Justice Epstein and Mr. Sandler and the team get the job done properly and completely, because I think that there will be changes, and I'm not presuming upon what they're going to write or conclude, but I think there'll be probably significant changes they suggest to us, and by extension to police services and other people involved in this across the country and around the world. And if you think about a lot of things we do, and I've increasingly come to look at things this way, unlike some of the commentators who don't, which is that, you know, what is the cost to families and to communities and to people in Toronto, this is what where we're responsible for somebody who goes missing and is missing for an extended period of time or forever. What is the cost of the traumatic kind of toll that takes on people if these things aren't handled well? When people have trust in the police service that they're going to come to their aid and be there. That's when people want them there the most, is when they're in the most trouble. And so I just, as I say, you always look at these things and say, well, that's a lot of money, and it is. But I think it is going to be something that will pay huge long-term dividends for the police service and for us, and in particular for the people who will have occasion. You never know how much you value these kinds of things until you pick up the phone or go online and say, I have a problem here, somebody in my family is missing. So I just want to say that in the context of, I was asked by the media today earlier on, did I support this? And I said strongly for that reason. And we've heard that that's it. In terms of the financial request, we've heard they're going to have the report on time, and I think a very important report it's going to be. And then the onus will shift to us as to what we and the police service do to respond to it.
Thank you very much. Can I have a motion to approve the report? Councillor Nunziata, seconder. Meritori, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Item number 9 is the City of Toronto Council Decision 2017 Annual Statistical Report, and we have a deputation, and that would be Derek.
So in this report, it says, this is in response to a motion from the City of Toronto Council to report back to the Executive Committee on the implementation of Toronto Police Services Open Data Plan. Now, I just want to point out to Deputy Chief McLean here and the rest of the Toronto police officers what the City of Toronto's, they call it an Open Data Master Plan says. The City of Toronto Open Data Policy include adopting and enforcing the open by default standard similar to the province of Ontario. Complete March 2017, City of Toronto Open Data Policy now includes an open by default standard for all city data. Okay, well, I just want to explain to Deputy Chief McLean here and the rest of you police officers from the Toronto Police just how serious the City of Toronto takes their own open by default data standard. So I was at Special Governance Committee recently, and I got a little irate over a line of BS I was being fed. So I was like, you know, they really put a great emphasis on their procedural bylaw rules. So I was like, you know, I wrote to Lurie Watkis, the head city clerk. I said, you know, I looked in these rules. I don't actually see in your definition section, again, a definition for what a bylaw is. And her response was, well, I don't know, because she never bothered getting back to me. Just like Diana here, she just ignored the question. And, you know, I emailed Deputy City Clerk John Elvidge. That guy's great. I mean, he'll get back to me sometimes within 39 minutes to answer a question. But no, Lurie Watkis is too good to answer my question. So I mentioned yesterday at North York Budget Committee, Councillor Bradford said, we had a thoughtful and provocative discussion and all this procedural rule nonsense that prevents us from asking questions here. And I just want to point out to the Toronto Police, because you're being expected to have an open data policy from the City of Toronto, that, just so we're clear on this, we have a constitution. That constitution mentions in the first line, recognizing the supremacy of God. Genesis 1:26 says, I have dominion over all of the earth. There's 3 court cases I've managed to find saying that sovereignty is ultimately in the people. One Supreme Court case, Mercer versus Ontario Attorney General, says that the Queen is holding my royal prerogatives for me in trust. Who knew? But after all that, the servants at an organization Joe Penichetti even admitted isn't recognized as government by the Constitution would still, stunningly, have you all believe that, oh, sorry, Derek, but you can't ask us questions at these meetings until we pass a bylaw that allows you to ask us questions at these meetings. In the immortal words of Billy Madison's principle, everyone here is now dumber for having to listen to that. I award the City of Toronto no points, and may God have mercy on your soul. And I wish Councillor Ford, he's not here again this time. Every time I'm here, he's not. I just want to point out, during the council cut crisis, right? Premier Ford, the day after that happened, said at a press conference, I put it in an affidavit, City of Toronto lawyer Fred Fisher has a copy of it, because one thing every politician at every level and every region needs to remember is that we all share the same boss. We all work for the people. That's why we get to ask questions at these meetings. Why? Because we're the boss. Even Premier Ford knows that. So I mentioned the rule of law. I actually have it right here in the police officer's manual. Rule of law is a legal principle of general application sanctioned by the recognition of authorities that is usually expressed in the form of a maxim or logical proposition. It is called a rule because in doubtful or unforeseen cases, it is a guide or norm for a decision. So I was talking to someone from the City of Toronto recently, and they said, okay, you know what, Derek? Tell you what, you provide me the evidence that says you can ask questions at these board committee meetings. Okay, well, the maxim of law that says here, if I don't know if it picks up on the camera, they translate it first in Latin. I won't say the Latin though. Everything that the law does not forbid is permitted, okay? So unless you guys here at the City of Toronto want to specifically write in your procedural bylaws once and for all that the public who come to speak here at these meetings can't ask questions, this maxim of law is all the evidence I need, plus the paycheck you guys get from the public because you work for us and you're paid by the public. And I just want to point out Beattie versus Northwest Transportation Company, 1886, the Supreme Court of Canada said, in the case of Bose versus City of Toronto, decided that even a member of a municipal council is a trustee. And Councillor Bradford was actually interested in finding that out last night when I spoke to him afterwards.
Thank you, Derek. Any questions of the deputant? Seeing none.
Nobody ever asked me questions.
Thank you very much.
here, Chair.
I spoke to you about that already. Why? Right. All right. Thank you very much, Derek. Any questions? The board members, any questions? Anybody like to speak to this? A motion to receive? Ms. Shadraka-Sarah, seconded by Ms. Molinar. All in favor? That's carried. Item number 10. City of Toronto Council decision request to establish a community police office at 200 Poplar Road. We have a deputant, Miroslav Glavic. Please come forward. Glavich. Here's fine. Welcome. How are you?
5 minutes, right?
That's right.
City in
Yes.
Yeah, whatever. Go on. Hi. Congratulations on your appointment. Congratulations on the chair and the vice chair, and congratulations on the mayor. Your leg brace being removed. Woohoo, now you can walk and run around. I live in what you call 43 Division. I attend many of the CPLC meetings. I don't hate the police. I love them. I just like to criticize people when they're wrong. I'm against opening a mini station community office wherever in Poplar Road, because that costs the taxpayers dollars a lot of money, which can be spent in a lot more community service. You have a building at 4331 Lawrence Avenue East. It's called 43 Division. If you open that new community office, the idea is good. It's a waste of money. You're going to have to hire more officers. One of the local commanders at the division constantly says they don't have enough staff. A lot of the 43 divisions officers are constantly going way outside to the different events outside 43 division. Even there were 2 officers from 43 division who went to Fort Fest in Vaughan, Woodbridge. I don't know why Toronto police officers are going there. They could be spending time in the community dealing with the whole neighborhood. Officers, you guys have put 43 Division can rearrange how they do it. I see more officers in downtown, in more community events than in 43 Division. I can't remember the last time there was a coffee with a cop thing. You know, you get together in the McDonald's and talk to your local officers. If Councillor Ainsley, who started this whole thing, I think executive or Scarborough Community Council, rearrange how 43 Division works and how the officers, because you rarely see a single police officer in 43 Division comparing to every other division outside Scarborough. If you want to have a community office, have the actual officers, instead of going to Fort Fest in Woodbridge, Vaughan, whatever, and what's it called, the Taste of the Danforth or any other event, stay within the community. You know, it financially makes sense. That is all.
Any questions of Mr. Glavich? I just have a question of the service, following up on what Mr. Glavich said. He made some good points. Deputy, can you talk maybe a little bit about the philosophy of the service and neighborhood officer program, where we're moving forward relative to deployment versus maybe construction of buildings?
Absolutely. When we look at what is behind the neighborhood community officers, it really speaks to what is modern policing, and it is the development of relationships. And developing relationships takes time, and it takes consistency. And that is a driving principle behind this program, is keeping officers in those neighborhoods for a significant period of time so that those relationships and that contact can happen with the community, but also that contact can happen with agencies that can help solve problems before they have to require a law enforcement response, as well as understand the need to advocate for those who may not have a voice, but also find solutions that are, to use the phrase, outside of the box or creative. And so the program is designed with those types of principles in mind, but the key piece is having the same officers in the neighborhoods month after month, year after year, so that that consistency and those relationships can happen.
And I guess just a follow-up question, to make those relationships happen, we don't require more bricks and mortar to make that happen. Is that correct?
No, it actually requires the right people. It's a very human part of our business.
All right, thank you very much. Any other questions from board members? Anybody like to speak? Councillor Nunziata.
So, so the chief is going to report back on council's motion, correct? But I see that the intent of the motion is they're asking for the office, but as well as asking for as part of their newly announced neighborhood officers program that there be a neighborhood officer in that particular community, correct? Is it would be two issues here? Like not so much like asking for the program to get the officers in that community, but then the second request is to have the office, right? A permanent office. Is that two different requests?
Deputy, you want to take that?
Yeah, take that one.
If I know how to turn this on. Hi. If I read the request properly, first the council is asking for a standalone, what we used to call community station. So we will report back to the board on our position, on the chief's position on the community station. Secondly, if Councilor Nunziata, you're suggesting that the neighborhood officer program, it is going to be rolled out, but you know, I came before this board number of times. We have 140 neighborhoods, and we are going to roll it out. We are going to sequence working with the chief, working with the city to look at the prioritizing, and also pending budget approval. So they will be going to 43 division right now has 4 neighborhood officer teams, and they will expand once we have proper resourcing, and once, you know, like I said, it has to be sequenced. So it will come, but I can't tell you when.
No, I understand. So really it is having the neighborhood officers as part of the program in that community, and having the permanent space is two different issues. So as far as the program, will we be getting a list of where these officers would be allocated and which communities?
I am at the present time preparing a report for the chair, and I'm sure the chair will share that with the board.
Thank you, Deputy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, Deputy, yes, you want a comment?
So in addition to the consistency of our deployment for the neighborhood community officer program, remember we're also expanding our connected officer program, and so that's another way that we can continue to make those relationships and have that connection despite of any type of bricks and mortar.
That's terrific, thank you. Any other questions of board members? No, seeing none. Can I have a motion to receive? Mayor Tory, seconder. Councillor Nunziata, all in favor? That's carried. The only item left is the walk-on item, which is item number 15, which was circulated on the table over there. Does anybody wish to make a deputation on this matter? I may have announced that before you came in, Derek. It's over there. It's a city of, where is it? Right here. It's the agreement for the use of property located at 660 Fleet Street, Fort York Armory, for graduation purposes, officer graduation purposes. Okay, all right. I see no deputants. Do we have any questions? Board members, any questions? Oh, sorry. Yes, legal. Do you have a comment?
Mr. Chair, I just have one suggestion. For efficiency, I might suggest that the Deputy Chief of Human Resources be delegated the authority to execute all three agreements. It's the same agreement, and so it likely makes more sense to do it that way rather than have one come to you and two to the deputy.
Okay. Do we need a motion to that effect to make that change? I'm sorry, I already called for DEPs and didn't see any. I'm sorry. We're in the middle of the discussion now. You can speak to me after if you like. If you have any comments you want to pass on, I'd be happy to talk to you. Do I have a motion? Sorry, this was on the fly, so the motion's on the fly. Can everybody take a moment to read the motion, the amendment? To amend recommendation 1 to state the Deputy Chief of Human Resource Command to execute in place of the Chair to execute. Are members all right with that? I will move that if members are okay. A seconder on the motion. On the report itself, have somebody move that? Ms. Molnar, seconder. Ms. Chandra-Casera, all in favor? That's carried. Can I have somebody move adjournment? Ms. Chandra-Casera, seconder. It has to be Mayor Tory. Yes. Mayor Tory happily seconds that for numerous reasons. Thank you. All in favor? That's carried. Oh, and just to let everybody and the public know that our next meeting is Tuesday, February the 25th at 1:30 in North York. You'll see it up there, North York Civic Center. And there's a list of all of our locations for this year. It may change, but those are the locations we have right now. We're moving right across the city as best we can.